Hi everyone, meteorologist Brian Bennett, and here's your forecast for Saturday, September 9th. We're down to the final hours before this storm comes on shore of the state of Florida. I do have some very important things to share with you, a few things that have changed with the latest forecast, some good things, some bad things. So if you'll hang with me for a minute, I can share those with you, and hopefully you'll be as prepared as you potentially could be about the type of weather that we're expecting over the state of Florida in particular. The winds have decreased a little bit. That's some good news. It's a Cat 3 hurricane blowing at 125 miles per hour, so still a strong hurricane, but hey, it's down from 185, so we'll take anything we can get. And that is because of the very rugged mountainous terrain of Cuba. Hurricanes can't stand rugged terrain, so that's why we're seeing the storm weaken a little bit. Now, as that moves off to the north, it is going to move over some very warm water and not any terrain to really impact it until it moves into Florida. So the storm will probably strengthen just a little bit again before it moves onshore in southwest Florida. A little bit of bad news here. The storm is still moving westerly at 9 miles per hour. We do not want to see this storm go in the Gulf of Mexico. If it does, then we're going to see a much worse storm surge for the west coast of Florida, Tampa Bay in particular. We want to see this storm turn to the north. Actually, an eye over the west coast of Florida is better than an eye over the Gulf of Mexico. So later today is going to be a crucial time looking for this center of circulation to make that final turn to the northwest. Again, the longer it's along Cuba, the farther out west it's going to move, and the worse it's going to be for the Tampa Bay area. All right, here's a look at the satellite imagery, and this is one of the products that I'll be watching pretty closely. To follow that little dot there, the little center of circulation, we'll be watching for that turn to the north and hoping that that will happen later this afternoon. If it doesn't, again, then we're looking at a storm that's going to go a bit farther west, maybe even into the Gulf of Mexico. Looking at the satellite here, the storm is looking pretty ragged on the western side. You can see that the mountains are really having their way with the storm, but nonetheless, the core of the storm, the eye wall, the main meat and potatoes of the storm, that is sticking together. So the storm is not going to dissolve and go away. It's going to move north and continue to be a major hurricane to contend with for the state of Florida. All right, here is a look at the wind map right now. Here's Florida. Here's Cuba down here. And the red represents winds that are stronger than we're seeing over on the left side of the storm. So in the right quadrant is where we see the stronger winds. So as the storm rides up over Florida, keep in mind that if you're on just on the easterly side of the eye wall, that's where we can see some of the strongest winds in this hurricane. Here's the latest National Hurricane Center track. Maybe a little bit of good news for the east coast of Florida with the storm being farther west, but really bad news for the west coast of Florida from Naples all the way through Tampa Bay. This is a bad scenario. This is not a worst case scenario for Tampa Bay. A storm coming in off the Gulf would be a worst case scenario, but this ranks up there as a pretty bad scenario to be happening. It's to have a major hurricane rolling right over the populated areas of the west coast of Florida. So we're looking at the storm making landfall. It's been pushed back a little bit because of the farther track to the west, but it should make landfall, it looks like, tomorrow evening on your Sunday evening, and then right up to the north. All right, here's the timeline of the winds when the winds will become tropical storm force. That's between 39 and 73 miles per hour. So on the very southern tip of Florida, by 2 p.m. today, you want to wrap up everything you got to do. And then as you head towards, let's say, Naples area, by 8 p.m. this evening, also over to Miami as well, by 8 p.m. this evening, you want to wrap up any departures, any evacuations, any boards you're putting on your home. By 2 a.m., I would say just north of the Cape Coral area, you want to have everything wrapped up. In the Tampa Bay area, from St. Petersburg to Tampa to Sarasota, over to Plant City to Lakeland, all the way over to the East Coast, you want to have everything wrapped up by 8 a.m. because that's when those tropical storm force winds will begin in this area. And then by 8 p.m., we'll see the tropical storm force winds begin in the Jacksonville area and also down around the Cedar Key area as well. All right, here's a look at the spaghetti model plots for intensity. And what this tells us is that the models predicted a bit of a decrease in energy as the storm moved over Cuba. That was predicted. Now, as it moves back over the warm Caribbean, the models are predicting a little bump. Maybe the winds could increase about 10 to 15 miles per hour as it moves away from Cuba and into some warm water. And then when it makes landfall, then we're going to see the storm rapidly diminish in intensity as it moves over the friction of Florida. Here's a look at the spaghetti model plots. The models, for the most part, agree that we're going to have landfall right around the Fort Myers, Naples, Cape Coral area, and then the storm rides north, practically right over downtown Tampa, and then it curves off to the northwest. There are a few model runs that have the storm going into the Gulf, which again is not a scenario we want to see. At this point, is there a possibility that the storm's going to ride up into Miami? I wouldn't rule anything out. Hurricanes are notorious for doing crazy things, but I'd say the odds are really slim that we're seeing the storm right up the east coast of Florida at this point. All right, so we were originally talking about the storm riding up the east coast of Florida, and as you know, it's shifted to the west coast of Florida, but the path has only shifted by about, I'd say, 60 to 70 miles. And I know that really changed the type of weather that we're expecting, especially in the Tampa Bay area. But for the most part, the models are doing a pretty good job. The reason why is this hurricane is actually responding to high pressures. One high pressure stretches all the way up from Canada down to Mexico. So about a 2,000 mile wide high pressure over the U.S. We also have a Bermuda high that's about 5,000 miles wide over the Atlantic Ocean. So some very large continent-wide synoptic weather systems, and this storm is responding to that. So to have a change in its path of about 60 miles or so over about a 4-day period, it really isn't that bad. We knew the hurricane was coming, but unfortunately it has shifted to a path which is going to impact folks on the west coast. Of course, that being better news for folks on the east coast of Florida. All right, so let's take a look at the latest GFS model, and it really agrees with the spaghetti plots and the National Hurricane Center track as well. Again, the models are really coming into pretty good agreement about the timing and the intensity and the location of the storm as well. So here we are. You can easily see the center of circulation rolling right over the Florida Keys. It is going to be a brutal impact for the Florida Keys. As we move towards Sunday afternoon into early Sunday evening, we're looking at landfall and again right around the Cape Coral area. Fast forwarding to Sunday evening, the storm is moving to about the latitude of the Sarasota area. And then as we move fast forward to late Sunday evening and into I'd say right around midnight or so, perhaps 1 a.m., that's when the storm will be at the same latitude as most of Tampa and St. Petersburg and maybe even up in the Pasco County area. And then as we fast forward up to Monday morning, here we are at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the storm has reached the Georgia-Florida border. So from the storm first moving on shore on the southern tip of Florida, that occurs early Sunday, to the storm exiting the northern part of Florida, that's about 24 hours. It's going to take about 24 hours for the storm to move through the entire state of Florida. All right, guys, here's a look at a pretty cool graphic that I haven't shown you yet. This shows you the maximum wind speed possibility, and this is maximum wind gust. So you guys know the difference between a gust. We have sustained winds with a hurricane. That's when the winds are blowing at a constant speed. And then you have a gust, which can be maybe 20, maybe 30 miles per hour greater than that sustained speed. Well, this graphic shows you the maximum wind gust, which in turn would be the maximum wind that you can expect over your neighborhood. So this should answer a lot of questions in regards to what is the maximum wind that I can possibly see in my area, especially based on the current forecast track. Well, if you look at Marco Island up to Fort Myers and up into the Cape Coral area, we're looking at the color kind of in the reddish color here. That is a wind gust of about 115 to 120 miles per hour. So winds will max out about 120 for Fort Myers and the southwest coast of Florida. As you head eastward, that diminishes a bit, so the maximum wind that Miami is going to see is kind of in the orangish to reddish color, which is a max wind of about 65 or 75 miles per hour. Again, that is a maximum wind. That's not the sustained wind that we're looking at here. All right, Sarasota is right about there. Sarasota, you're looking at a maximum wind and kind of the light reddish color. So you could see a max wind right around 100 to 105 miles per hour. And as you head eastward, those winds will diminish. St. Petersburg is right here. You're looking at winds just above kind of the white color here. So you're looking at a max wind gust in St. Petersburg of right around 95 miles per hour. So still very strong winds. Keep in mind, St. Petersburg, you are actually facing the bay. The winds are going to be out of the northeast for much of the storm. So you're going to be facing a wind that is coming off the unimpeded bay. All right, so what about Clearwater area? Clearwater, you're looking at a maximum wind gust of right around 92 to 95 miles per hour. Heading north into parts of Pasco County, you're looking at a max wind gust of about 90 miles per hour. And Hernando County, a max wind gust of about 90 to 92 miles per hour. Citrus County, the storm is starting to dissolve a little bit, so maximum wind of right around 90 miles per hour. Orlando is farther inland. Remember, the winds are stronger on the eastern side of the storm, so Orlando, you could see winds gusting as high as perhaps 95 to 100 miles per hour. Heading to the east coast of Florida, anywhere from Cape Canaveral up through Daytona Beach, up through Jacksonville, you're looking at a maximum wind gust of about 75 to 85 miles per hour. And then once the storm moves north of about I-10, that's when the winds really start to erode. So we'll still have trees down, power outages down in Georgia, but the devastating winds will pretty much be done with by the time you get to I-10 and north. So hopefully that answers any questions you have about the maximum wind that you could see in your area. All right, here's a look at the categories of storm. And I wanted to show you this because, as I mentioned, there's a possibility the storm could strengthen a little bit right before it makes landfall. So here we can see the storm coming off of Cuba. You see little dots of yellow. That represents that we're seeing a Cat 2, maybe even a minimal Cat 3 hurricane right after it comes off of Cuba. But then notice we're starting to see a lot stronger winds. We're seeing perhaps getting close to the Cat 3 hurricane again. And then we're seeing, you see that little blip of orange there? That means that we're seeing a Cat 3 hurricane, maybe even getting into a very low Cat 4 hurricane. But right now it looks like it is going to make landfall, perhaps right around a Cat 3. If it does, that's a major hurricane, but that would be a little bit better than what we were looking at yesterday with it making landfall as a Cat 4 hurricane. So perhaps moving over Cuba has done some good things for us and perhaps lowered the category by one level as the storm moves onshore right around the Cape Coral area. All right, as the hurricane is right over the latitude of the Tampa Bay area, we're looking at basically a Cat 1, maybe a Cat 2 hurricane still. And as the storm moves farther north, it continues to erode and eventually just turn into a tropical storm and a tropical depression as it moves off to the north. All right, here's a look at a brand new model. Again, this is the proprietary model. This is called the IBM Deep Thunder model, and this model is being run on one of the most powerful computers in the world. IBM spent a lot of money to have this computer set up and this computer model run on this particular supercomputer. And taking a look at it, it looks like the model has a really good grip on where this storm's going to head. And this is what it's going to look like on radar. It's going to move up right over the Cape Coral area, possibly right over Tampa or just east of Tampa, and then go to the north and then make that turn to the northwest and kind of rain itself out over parts of the southeast. And again, there we have Jose sitting off the coast, a little mischievous guy that we're going to need to watch to make sure he doesn't decide to make a complete circle and come back towards Florida. But right now, we don't care about Jose. We only care about Irma, as it is in the here and the now. Here's a look at some of the rainfall predictions according to the IBM model. As you can see, it's predicting rainfall totals that are easily getting up to the foot range. And not only for Tampa and Sarasota. But notice even down in southeast Florida, we're looking at the possibility of perhaps a foot of rain. So this is a very large storm that's going to cover a large area. Therefore, the entire state of Florida is looking at the possibility of perhaps about a foot of rain on average, with some isolated locations having possibly 15, maybe even up to 20 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain in a 24-hour period to have almost an inch of rain in some locations. Otherwise, we're looking at about a half an inch of rain falling per hour across the state of Florida. So freshwater flooding is going to be a bit of concern across parts of Tampa Bay, but it's not going to be as big of a threat and danger as storm surge could potentially be. Unfortunately, storm surge risk has increased because the storm is already trending farther west. When the storm earlier was tracking over Polk County, we hardly had any storm surge risk at all for much of the Tampa Bay area, but now we're looking at the possibility for some areas being inundated by water. That includes Anna Maria Island down to Longboat Key. That includes much of Paso Grill and Fort DeSoto, and that includes many parts of South Tampa and especially the northeastern part of the bay. And as you head south, we are looking at catastrophic, historic storm surge flooding for the Cape Coral, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers area. So the blue color here represents a storm surge of 1 foot, an inundation I should say. The yellow is an inundation of 3 feet, the orange inundation of 6 feet. So again, 1, 3, and 6. The red representing inundation of at least 9 feet. Inundation is water that'll be on land that would normally be dry. You see that Port Charlotte is underwater. And as we head down towards Cape Coral, you see that all this red here, much of Cape Coral under 9 feet of water. A lot of canals in this area, so this huge residential area is going to go underwater, causing millions of dollars worth of damage. Same thing goes. Fort Myers Beach is going to be under 9 feet of water. Just about all of Sanibel Island, even out to Captiva, again, 9 feet of water, destroying homes. Very sad to say, in the Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach area. I used to live in a little area called Iona right there. Well, my former home there is going to be under about 9 feet of water. And then as the farther inland you head, the less the water impact is. But do keep in mind, if you're right along any waterways, the storm surge flooding could be bad. Even if you're 25 to 30 miles inland, we're still looking at major flooding occurring right around the Fort Myers shore area. Lehigh Acres, you're far enough inland where it's not a big concern. All right, so storm surge is going to be a major issue. The threat has diminished for the east coast of Florida. It's really gone down for the Homestead area as well. It's mainly going to be an issue for the west coast of Florida, especially southwest Florida, and it's going to ramp up some more if we happen to get the storm moving offshore Florida. All right, this is a big enough concern that we need to take a closer look at it, and being that it has changed from recent forecasts. So in about an hour, I'm going to have another update, maybe 30 minutes to an hour. I'll have a more thorough update on the storm surge and what you can expect in your area. Again, a very serious threat to parts of Florida, especially southwest Florida. All right, guys, I answered when you can expect the storm, where the storm's going to go, what type of wind you can expect, how much rain you can expect, and then the storm's going to be over on Monday afternoon. We can begin cleanup. Hopefully power will be back on within a couple of days, but do keep in mind power could be off for a week or even a 2-week period, as there's going to be a big mess to clean up. So all right, guys, please stay safe, and as you finish up your preparations or perhaps evacuate, just be safe out there. We're going to make it through this. We're tough Floridians. Again, by Monday, the storm will be history, and at least we can begin cleanup and moving on with our lives. All right, that's all I have for right now. Again, look forward to the storm surge graphic coming out here in about 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to try to do a Facebook Live update at 4 p.m. to answer any questions that you might have. So that is it for now.